right, so I'm currently on the phone with Matt. He's another musician that reached out about the interview series. So I'm going to go ahead and give him a chance to introduce himself.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Matt. I'm a musician from Chicago, Illinois, originally. I'm living up in St. Paul now. Started playing guitar around the time I was like 13 years old. Been in a few bands over my life. One that was kind of a little bit successful in the Chicago music scene in Northwest Indiana. And I also make electronic music on my computer. I make it under a couple different monikers, but yeah, I've been a musician for pretty much, most of my life, either playing in orchestra when I was, in grade school or, playing in bands throughout high school and throughout my adult life.
Okay, so we'll touch base on some of that, but I always like to start kind of where it all began. How did you first find music? What brought it into your life? What about it was important enough for you to want to continue to pursue?
Yeah, so I can remember from a very, very, very young age, probably like 3 or 4 years old, my dad always playing like Led Zeppelin records and, like listening to Led Zeppelin tapes in the car. So I think it really, I would have to say like Led Zeppelin and like Jimi Hendrix are what originally called me to music. Cause something about those melodies and just the way the music sounded like, I didn't realize it at the time, but the song 10 Years Gone was something that I would constantly want to listen to the point where my dad even made me like a Led Zeppelin cassette.
So would you say, his influence on you kind of made you start looking into music as a whole?
Yes, definitely. Because I remember like being very interested in the guitar at first, just like I remember seeing Jimmy Page playing his, Les Paul and just being really drawn to what he was doing with it. To the point where I remember when I was 5 years old that we went to a block party and some guy had this Les Paul knockoff from, I think it's like Korea. It's called a Hondo. And I was so enamored with it. He just gave me the guitar.
So was that your first introduction into starting to learn an instrument? Was that guitar you were given, or did you start looking into, how to do instrumentation before that?
No, that was my first time ever trying to do anything with an instrument. I mean, I was 5 years old. This thing was gigantic to me. Mm-hmm. But eventually, like just going through school, I heard about orchestra and I actually started playing the cello for a while. And that's kind of how I started getting into more formal music training.
Okay. So what made you decide cello when you went into what I assume is the traditional musical program in like public school kind of thing?
I think it was the sound. It was really, I didn't really quite like the violin because of how kind of grating it could be when you didn't play it properly. Mm-hmm. The cello was a lot more forgiving in that regard. Plus I just really liked the sound of it. It just seemed very calming and like a very complex instrument.
Okay. And so I assume you did like concert band. Were you able to do any sort of marching band with cello, or did you just not do marching band?
No, I actually didn't do marching band. I really only did the cello up until middle school. From that point, I kind of left orchestra behind because I realized I had this guitar sitting in my closet that I could be playing. That was a lot cooler to me than, a cello at the time. Now I wish I would have stuck with the cello a little longer, but once I realized it was like, oh yeah, I have this guitar that I could be learning. I started taking lessons to learn the guitar once I was like 12 years old.
Okay, so would you say then guitar kind of put you into the high school curriculum through concert band and everything, or was that more kind of outside and kind of exploring more of like the garage band type circuit, like learning?
Yeah, it was definitely the garage band circuit.
Okay, so did you only do concert band through middle school then, and then through high school you kind of dropped out of it?
Yeah, Yeah, I
Okay.
would say like middle school is when I stopped and I started like learning guitar more on my own.
Hmm.
And then once I got to high school, it was like, all right, let's find some other kids that are playing music as well and start writing some songs.
Sure. So, how did you approach, writing with the instrument once you decided that it is the pathway you wanted to go?
So a lot of it when I was first starting out, like I really wanted to sound like the bands that I was listening to at the time. So a lot of it was like System of a Down and like Corn and stuff like that. Like I bought a 7-string guitar, or I had my mom, I should say, bought me a 7-string guitar, Deftones as well. So like I was trying to write a lot of music that sounded like that. So I, more approach it like just like trying to sound like really heavy and cool, more than trying to like, because I've never really learned anything theory wise once it came to the guitar.
So, most of your approach to learning the instrument was kind of trying to figure out how, bands that you liked did it and trying to emulate that to learn.
Yeah, yeah. Once, especially when I was starting out, as I got older and started to learn the instrument better, I branched out a little more. But definitely starting off, it was just like, oh yeah, what sounds how can I kind of sound like the bands that I like?
And so, were you writing along with like learning those songs, or were you kind of just in the mindset to learn them and then eventually you would get around to writing something?
It was like learning and writing at the same time because I had a lot of friends that were also musicians. So we would just be, being high schoolers, you have unlimited free time. So you just can sit down and write and write and write and write until it's like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Let's make that into something. So it was very informal.
So, did you play in a bunch of different bands when you were in high school, or did it take a little longer to actually get something stable that you played in?
I had 2 different bands that I played in that were semi-stable in high school. My first band was called The Saw. And that was just like, that was more, like I said, me and my friends kind of trying to sound like heavy, kind of trying to sound like System of a Down. We'd play System of a Down covers and stuff like that. And we did play several shows, actually.
And once you kind of did figure out that you wanted to go in that direction and pursued it, how did you kind of approach that post high school? Did you pursue any sort of after high school music education, or was it all kind of in your free time?
It's pretty much all been in my free time that I've learned anything. I've learned like like little bit of music theory in the time since high school, like a very very small amount. Like I can do like if somebody calls out chords, I can play them, but most writing has just been like working like, oh, what sounds good with the chords that we're playing right now. Trying to do everything by ear mostly, I would say.
So after high school, did the bands that you're in continue, and are they still in existence, or what happened there?
None of the bands that I was in high school continued. In 2015, I joined a band or I actually helped create a band called Invictus. That was based out of Chicago, like the northwest suburbs. And that band continued on for quite a while. We were up until the pandemic. The band was continuing on. I left the band in 2018, but that was probably like my main songwriting output so far as an adult.
Okay. So since then, have you just been working on your own personal stuff, like a solo project?
Yeah, mostly just like messing around with, because I kind of got away from music for a little while. The pandemic really I would say stifled my creativity, and just a lot of like personal stuff going on in my life kind of kept me away from music for a little while. So in the last like I would say like year, I've been getting much more getting back into guitar, trying to learn more like math rock style guitar, like bands like This Town Needs Guns, TTNG, Milets, or Terra Mellos, Giraffes, stuff like that.
Okay. And so are you kind of looking to kind of rebuild a project or join somebody else's project? What do you kind of envision for your future?
I really like to build a new project. Really something like I've always wanted to do something more like heavy and noisy with like indie music. Because that's really that's one of my favorite like ways to write music is kind of like bands like Pixies or Death Cab for Cutie, but just do it a little bit heavier, you know.
Okay. And so, what are some of your favorite memories that you have surrounding music? Whether it was, a concert you went to or, something you wrote, something that just kind of motivated you to continue working on music.
Well, when I was in my band Invictus, there was we played a show at a place called Brower House in Lombard, Illinois, and we opened for Michael Graves, who is one of the he was one of the lead singers of the Misfits, and he uh, he actually got to like watch us play and everything, and he came up to us after the show and complimented us, said like he really liked the sounds and that he could really see that we were working very hard on our music. So that was definitely like meeting somebody I grew up listening to in high school and like idolized his singing voice, to have him compliment me and my band on the work that we were doing. That was definitely something I was like, wow, all right, like we're doing something right here.
Sure, definitely.
um but as far as concerts go, I would actually say there was a festival in 2006 that Korn and Deftones did called the Family Values Tour that went around the country. Um, and seeing the Deftones and Korn play one right after the other, and like really getting to see like a really well produced stage show when I was like, I think it was like 14 years old, just about to turn 15. That definitely, I was like, wow, I want to be able to do something like that one day.
Um, Awesome. So, what are some links where people can find some of the stuff that you have done, or if you have social media presence for the stuff that you're working on while you're learning? Where can people find you and check you out?
They could find me on SoundCloud for some of my electronic music. It would be soundcloud.com/slash GENE-ELEC. That'll have all of my electronic music on there. If you want to listen to my pop punk band from Chicago, that would be Invictus on like Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. They can find the links there. Um, yeah, that would be the primary places they could find me right now.
And so I always like to give the person that I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out a message that they generally vibe with. So, what's something to you that you feel you should express?
No matter what you're doing musically, keep doing it. Stay creative. Don't listen to what anybody tells you. Just keep creating no matter what. Even if it's bad, keep doing it.